Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
From the heart of Beijing to the edges of the global stage, you're at Roundtable. I'm Niu Honglin. Picture a morning commute, but from a very different height. At just around 1 meter tall, the world looks unfamiliar. The curb feels like a wall. Crossing the street takes longer than the traffic light allows. Signs are too high to read, and spaces designed for everyone suddenly feel designed, well, at least not for you. When cities are built from an adult's perspective, children often navigate a world that isn't meant for them. But what happens when planners, policymakers, and communities begin to see the city from 1 meter high? For today's show, I'm joined by Fei Fei and Steve Hatherley. Now pull up a chair, and maybe a short chair, and let's join the conversation. Cities are often measured by skyscrapers, infrastructure, and economic growth. But there's another way to judge a city's progress, by how it treats its smallest citizens. Children rarely sit in planning meetings or draft policy documents, yet the environments we create shape their health, their safety, and the opportunities for decades to come. Today, we invite you to explore a growing moment, a growing movement that asks this simple question: what would a city look like if it truly listened to children? The reason we're doing this is because China has been putting effort in building societies that is more friendly to kids, that is better for the nurturing and the growing of children for quite a long time. And now we're looking at a new guideline, making what we're doing, making the effort not only from the provincial government's level, grassroots level, but from a nationwide perspective.
Yeah, actually starting from 2021, I think that a number of cities across China have been piloting, building what they call child-friendly society. And up to the end of 2025, we're seeing more than 100 cities that's been already launched this kind of pilot projects to build child-friendly cities. And now we have a new guideline trying to advance this kind of scheme across the entire country. So we are talking not only about big cities anymore, it also incorporated, for example, rural areas in China, and also aims to better protect minors' lawful rights and interests, and also promote children's healthy and all-round growth. That's a big concept, actually. It involves a lot of things.
Yeah, this is official as well. This is done by the National Development and Reform Commission and also the Office of National Working Committee on Children and Women under the State Council. And the plan, if we look at the specifics of it, it means making everyday services more accessible for kids, more affordable as well, including areas such as schooling and medical care, travel, sports, recreation. So they covered a lot of different things here. One example would be children get to go for free or at least have a big discount to tourist sites. More schools may open up sports facilities during holidays. That would be great for the kids. Really frustrating, I suppose, right? When you've got that beautiful big playground right in front of you and you can't use it during your time off. Also, this is interesting too. Hospitals are encouraged to set up 24/7 emergency green channels for young kids. I looked into what a green channel was because I hadn't heard that term before. So this is where hospitals, as far as I understand it, would set up dedicated around the clock, like I said, 24/7 emergency services for young kids specifically. And this would allow them to bypass standard waiting times and receive immediate medical attention, making them the priority.
Yes, we previously have talked about building communities that is child-friendly. That was talking about more about the facility, about maybe building more slides, more swings so that they can play, and making sure that the safety standards. And when I say safety standards, I'm not only talking about the construction safety standards, but also the kind of material we use, whether or not they're green enough for kids, for a growing 5-year-old, something like that. But that is still within the relatively more detailed perspective when it comes to building a child-friendly society. And now we're looking at a very all-round kind of guideline because when it comes to the environment, it's not only the physical environment around kids, but also the emotional one, the society. You see schools are asked to tackle bullying more proactively. Online platforms must filter harmful content and limit excessive use, and stricter checks can stop minors from entering places like bars or gaming hotels. I remember when I was a kid, I have school teachers chasing after little kids into the kind of bars that are full of computers because for my generation, computer is not something that you will have in each and every household. And in order to play those video games, you go to these online bars, or I don't know, in Chinese we call it cafeteria kind of bar places. It's just full of computers, and if you pay up, you get to play or use the computer for a certain amount of time. But right after the popularity of those kind of places, the country has already rolled out that only adults are allowed to use these places because it's hard to control and make sure that they are child friendly. So those are also in it.
Yeah, you're talking about safety measures
Yes.
there. And then what I mentioned before about, medical care and opened up recreation facilities, sports facilities. That's talking about public services. So there's much more at play here than simply, upgraded...
Building more slides.
Yeah, upgraded slides and swing sets in the park.
And also when it comes to, for example, building slides, offering more public services, or when it comes to safety, I think the guideline also focuses on, a lot of the cases where it's more of a one-time effort, meaning they build a slide here, job accomplished, but no one is actually using that slide. And they are trying to make sure.
You have two kids. Kids. If a slide is there, people are using the slides.
Yeah, but, if they didn't pick the location right, or for example, in an open airspace, when it's raining outside or it's too cold or too hot, you just have like other conditions that are limiting children playing with them. And they're sort of trying to make sure that these kind of services will be carried on, will be continued. And also when it comes to families, when it comes to communities, they get the support they need in a timely manner. That's also very, very important.
I guess what you're talking about is don't just put the slide there and think, oh, everybody's going to use this. Actually put some thought into the area around it and what families or kids would want or need from the area around the slide to make sure that it's being put to use. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yes, and the reason this one is happening right now, the guideline is being rolled out currently, is because we have been putting in the effort from different perspectives, from the community building area, from local governments, from even enterprises, and even different hospitals have been trying to make their places a bit more child-friendly. We see by the end of 2025, 116 cities across China had launched pilot projects to build child-friendly cities and benefiting more than 110 million children in both urban and rural areas. And there are so many examples in different cities and different places.
There are, yeah.
For example, in the city of Shenzhen, they have built over 100 child-friendly parks. And so these parks, we're not only talking about parks with slides. They're also, integrating a lot of, for example, local landscape characteristics so that children can get a direct interaction with the nature. And also within these parks, they build a lot of educational hallways, for example, that children can learn about the nature while interacting with it. And also they're creating a safe environment so that children can, run around freely and not worrying about, for example, a scooter coming out and probably, put them in a dangerous situation.
It's an issue, isn't it? I mean, particularly in the bigger cities, and it's not just here in China. This is an issue in any big city around the world where you have, kids living in the downtown areas where there aren't a lot of parks or open spaces where they can freely run around and play without any worries. Yeah, then you're worrying about things like playing with a ball next to a road where there's a lot of traffic, and obviously that's not a safe thing to do. I like what they've done in Suzhou as well. They have a child-friendly transportation demonstration project, and what they've done there is they've introduced customized bus routes for weekend interest classes, along with signs at intersections. The signs are not meant for the kids. The signs are meant to remind drivers to be more patient. There aren't a lot of child drivers in Suzhou, as far as I know. But that's cool, right? So wherever the kids have their classes on the weekend, let's say there's an area of the city where there happens to be a lot of institutes or whatever, they have specialized bus routes along the way to take the kids there.
Yeah, and when it comes to signage, for example, in the city of Zhengzhou, they also put up what they call caring zebra crossing, which instead of, the regular white straps crossing signs on the road, they're putting in place a white-yellow stripes, so it's more obvious to drivers, and they said they've increased the vehicle yielding rate at intersections by 30%. So meaning, in school especially in school areas, drivers will be more mindful. There will be kids.
Surprisingly simple but effective. That's what's happening in a lot of cases. We see different cities taking different approaches, increasing the friendliness level of their community. And some cities would travel to other, because they're internationally, I think there's international standards for, maybe not a standards, more like association or secretariat for child-friendly city. And we see city planners go to these places, having a little bit of a study tour, field trip, learning about how to do things in their way and maybe taking some experiences.
Yeah, I mean, child-friendly cities isn't something that's only happening here in China. And I was on the UNICEF website this morning. They have their own program. It's called the Child-Friendly Cities Initiative, and that's a UNICEF-led program that supports municipal governments in realizing the rights of children at the local level. They use the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child as its foundation, and it's been around for a long time. That initiative was launched back in 1996. It was a project by UNICEF and UN Habitat to Act.
And we see many city planners would go to these model child-friendly cities to, learn a lesson or something so they can take something back to their city when it comes to the planning. And other cities would go for a different approach that is focusing on safety first. So the transportation, how to better design a road around an area with more kids or around a school. That's their first priority. And in some other cities, we see them taking pilot areas starting from schools and communities, as well as hospitals and children's interest centers, the places with more kids, and expanding it to public areas like public mall and parks and places like that. And that is why now with this new guideline, we can do things from a more systematic approach.
Well, I think up until now, it's really been a test the waters type of period with these pilot programs in over 100 cities. But now it seems the government is ready to move from that testing period to make this a permanent nationwide mechanism, and proof of that is that it's a part of the country's 15th five-year plan, and it's easy to connect the dots here as well, I think, because the goal is to build, yes, child-friendly cities, but also a birth-friendly society.
And also when it comes to, we have over 100 cities have already been launching this kind of pilots for the past 5 years now, and so when it comes to for instance, a less developed city or village in the western part of China, they may not have that much of knowledge, first of all, and then resources and also talents when it comes to building this kind of child-friendly society. Because when you think about it, it's not only about building slides, having more parks, having designated bus routes. It's more detailed than that. For example, the time period of your traffic light, sometimes too short for children to pass that intersection. Or
small detail, but really important.
Yes, the steps that adults can climb easily, but for children it will be too big of a step, or the elevator buttons can be too tall for them to reach. So it's a lot detailed. We need more detailed measures when it comes to how exactly are we building a child-friendly society for the 1 meter tall population out there.
Yes, and that is why we have all these detailed measures mentioned in the guideline. Which one caught your attention more?
Well, I think there are a lot of things. Well, for one, I really like they're pushing for a free preschool education, which is more of my child's age currently. I'm really hoping for that to happen. And then I think really interestingly, they talked a lot about mechanism building. And the question is, what exactly is that kind of mechanism? And then I checked on a case, for example, in a place called Karamai in Xinjiang, for instance. It's not a really wealthy city in China in particular, but they offer free public transportation for primary and secondary school students. And the reason they're able to doing that is because they have this kind of a similar mechanism in place, because when we're thinking about free transportation for students, they need, first of all, transportation authority to ensure they have the capacity. And then we need finance authority to handle all the subsidies and funding for these kind of services. And then we need education authority to verify this information of all the students in this area. And they need to have this coordinated regular communication process, and how to make that happen, and who is willing to take these kind of efforts to make sure this, the communication channel is always smooth. So I think that is what we can looking forward to in the future, is that we can see more of this kind of collaboration happening among different authorities, so that things I think no one would disagree about, we need our society to be friendly, to be inclusive to children of all ages. But who is there to take the efforts and do the things that needs to do to make the decisions out there?
Well, one of the things I think that they're doing is really smart is they are consulting parents on these decisions, because that's exactly what this policy is about. It's directly responding to parents' everyday challenges. If you don't have kids, if you're a younger person or an older person who doesn't have children, these are little things that you don't pay attention to when you're out and about in the city. Lower elevator buttons never even crossed my mind. Not one time in my life did I even think about that.
You're a tall man.
Which is why it never crossed my mind. But as soon as you said that, Fei Fei, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense, because I've seen in my apartment kids trying to reach the button for the upper floor, and they just can't do it. So they ask me, can you press that for me, please? Well, what happens if there's nobody in there when in the elevator when the kid comes home? Great thinking. But yeah, talking to the parents about what they need. Childcare, free early education, that would be a game changer, wouldn't it? Yeah. The small but urgent problems that parents face daily, like community-based childcare centers that are closer to home, so that you don't have to travel that extra few kilometers in the morning to drop your kids off, because that, of course, would be a huge difference. Things like that.
What I like, and I find this a fun, maybe not that cost-effective idea, but a really fun idea, is to consult kids themselves, or finding ways to include them in the planning process. One very positive, good example happened in Shenzhen. In the city of Shenzhen, a community designer actually talked to kids in several schools, and having them participating in the designing of a community oversight, so that they can design the pattern, the pictures on it, and after it's finished, imagine how exciting it is to cross a oversight that is designed by you yourself, or you participated in it. And that would make the little kids feel like, ooh, I am one of the masters of the city. I'm not only someone living here, I can do something to participate. And all the process is done from a pretty serious and official process. That is, you have to submit your design and you discuss with other kids, you discuss with other adults, and you prove to them how come your idea is a really good one. And after landing on a final decision, many kids are allowed to participate in the, let's say, the final construction process. It's just very nice.
In the final construction process.
Decorating process.
I was going to say, I thought we talked about safety already. You just climb up there for me, little boy. It'll be okay.
Not like that.
I'm gonna sound like a jerk here, I think. I mean, asking children for their opinions, I think sometimes it would be a good idea, but maybe don't go too far with that one.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
But for me, I think it's more of on the adult's job is you need to learn how to communicate and listen to children. And I think Honglin's Shenzhen example is a perfect example of adults listening to what the children are saying. And in often the cases, it's not only about society building, it's more in the parenting world is that when the children is, for example, refusing to your proposal, a lot of the time, a lot of parents will refuse to accept that no coming from their children. And I think when it comes to, for example, professionals, that they communicate with children on a daily basis, how do you, talk to children? How do you make sure that you get the information in a right way is also something that we need to, think about and develop on some level.
I don't know. I think the key element here, on the contrary, would be professionals. Professionals who understand the psychology of children, who knows what are some requests that are reasonable, that are actually what they need. What are some requests or proposals that are just, kids playing around and even kids being a little naughty. They're not really wanting this, or they don't know what they want.
You better ask the right kids.
Exactly.
You need to have the right questions because most of the time kids are very sincere. They're very serious about their answers.
They are serious, but they don't know better sometimes. So it's the reason I said professional being the key element here is because not every parent knows what they're doing, even when they're dealing with their own kids, let alone consulting kids as a group of experts about what they need.
Well, I mean, they don't have to be experts in some cases. The flip side of that coin would be, let's say you had an open space in your community and you're part of the community developing team and you want to build a park for young people. Maybe you put out a survey to the, 10 to 20-year-olds in the community and give them some multiple choices. What would you like to have here? Not far from here, there's a really cool skate park. And I don't know if you've ever seen it before. I just kind of happened upon it. And that's all it is. That's all it's designed for. There's nothing else. It's just for skateboarders and rollerbladers, and that's it. But I thought, wow, what a cool addition to the community. And the only people in there were teenagers. But these types of things are important because we have to have safe spaces for teenagers to spend their time when they're not in school and they're not studying. Because if they're not in school and they're not studying and they don't have a healthy, safe outlet for their energy, that's when they get themselves into trouble. Speaking as someone from North America, trust me that is true.
And besides those physical spaces that will allow them to have some fun and make some new friends, having their own little friend circle, their own little communities, it is also encouraged, the whole society is encouraged to create and to support the creation and the organization of certain hobby clubs, certain kind of not only extracurriculum classes, but also more importantly, the kind of projects that children can participate in. I think there has been this one example of a group of parents who are quite great. Some of them are scientists, some of them are constructors, and they have transformed one used school bus or just simply a bus. The bus is no longer in use because it's just very old, and they renovated the bus and making it into a smart. By saying smart, I'm talking about AI and internet technology related smart kind of community library. And all the projects all the construction as well as renovating and designing, and it was done by a group of kids, the group of kids in the community. So they started fixing and changing and decorating and decorating the bus and making it a entire project that can be enjoyed by not only the kids in the community but everybody in the community. But during the process, it has been a great experience for those participating kids as well.
Yeah, so when it comes to, involving children, well, regardless of their age, I think primarily maybe students of primary schools or secondary schools or even high schools, teenagers. It's also very important because we're not only talking about building a child-friendly society here, we are also talking about building the future of our society and what kind of generation we want in our future, who is going to, when we were the elderly in the society, who are going to be there to make the decisions for us, to build the infrastructure for the elderly, us. And I think teaching the students in this kind of, involving them in different community projects way is sort of teaching them about responsibility, about communication, about cooperation as well. I think is something that team working is also something that in today's digital age, a lot of kids kind of missed in their daily activities.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen in school, to be fair. I mean, I understand your point, I think, about, showing children that their voice matters, that their opinion is valuable and heard. But I think school is a really great place for that to happen too. Even classroom design, how should we decorate our room this year? And that can start as early as kindergarten. And then maybe the decisions get more important as the students get older. Yeah, sure. When it comes out into the community, if they can participate in art projects or give their opinions on park design or things like this from time to time, that would be good too. I think maybe even a more important thing is about, going back to the safety portion of our conversation. There's been a crackdown on bullying in schools in China too, and I think this goes back a few years, as a matter of fact, when this became a really important issue. Bullying and also unsafe products for kids. So food safety in schools has become something to watch for. Childcare centers, online protection, stronger online protection, harmful content, managing screen time, all of these other policies that we've talked about on Roundtable. I think these are also included in what we're talking about here too. We're not just talking about, putting lower elevator buttons for the kids, which is great, but also how to make them safer online too, and while they're in school.
Yes, because nationwide, definitely, we are pushing forward to the construction, to the building of child-friendly societies, child-friendly cities in as many cities as possible. But let's be frank, different cities are in different stage when it comes to the development of child-friendly communities. And these communities are not only in city areas, but also in rural areas as well. And rural kids might be facing other more urgent challenges that need to be addressed.
Well, one of the measures is exactly that cities are encouraged to learn from each other. So, for example, you could have two cities pair up and share their experiences of what their cities are doing. Maybe a developed eastern city could cooperate with a western smaller city to kind of be a partner slash guideline, perhaps, if they had more services and things like that, and maybe share that information to help them along the way.
And I think most specifically in a lot of rural areas in China, we still have, for example, left behind children. That I think this guideline also focuses on, providing safe spaces for them to play and grow. And also when their parents are not around all year round, who will be there to provide that kind of parental guidance for them. And then when it comes to their mental health, is also a big issue there. So who is going to be there to provide services, and who is going to be there to build the support system and safeguard these left behind children and ensure that their mental health won't be growing to a big epidemic in the rural areas, is also part of what the guideline is trying to tackle right now, launching this into a nationwide effort now.
And that is also why every year during the 2 sessions, we see different people, different delegates, members, and policymakers, advisors giving advice about building a more comprehensive and maybe also more pointing to different situations in different places kind of help strategy, or even just the kind of measure test that can see the situation of children's mental health in different places. And all these efforts are being made. And what we can do is to take a look around and see our cities, see our communities, and do a little reality check once in a while and see what are some other things that we can do to make our society a bit more child friendly.